Well, and then what? There's the question about a backbone, which many of us wonder about, and certainly there's the famous quote from Robert Frost: "The liberal is a man too broad-minded to take his own side in a quarrel." And I think that in some ways is, it's very generous and it's very tolerant to be interested in the other person's point of view. But as you point out in the book, you make a distinction between a liberal and a progressive, in that a progressive is an action-oriented liberal and a partisan liberal, if you will. And I remember your hero Franklin Roosevelt, a couple of quotes from Franklin Roosevelt. One is, he says, "I've always believed, and I have frequently stated, that my own party can succeed at the polls only so long as it continues to be the party of militant liberalism." And another quote in 1936 is one that I would love to hear a presidential candidate, and even better than that, a president, say: "Never before in all our history have these forces been so united against one candidate as they stand today against me. They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred." You don't get that. And in the book you say we need to be partisan, and we need to be militant, and so forth. And so where does that come in the Democratic side of the aisle?
Better than it was. I mean, and by the way, these wonderful days of the internet, you can only read that Madison Square Garden speech by FDR, but you can listen to it. And it's just something to think about. Yeah, where is that fire in the belly? You hear more of it now from Democrats than we did, a couple of years ago, but not as much. No, there's a real, okay, fire in the belly is one thing, and the influence of money, of interests. Now, you don't have to have purity. I mean, FDR had actually some industrial backers, and he made a deal with the devil, accepting the support of some of the segregationists. That didn't stop him from being the savior of America, I would say. But you do worry. You can see. I actually wrote about this in the Times a few columns back. Most industries have now swung their financial support to the Democrats. It's been a given of American politics for decades that the Republicans have a huge money advantage. Not now. Not at this point. Just about every major industry is either heavily supporting the Democrats or splitting the difference evenly. The only major industry the Republicans still have is oil and gas.
Is that a positive or a negative?
They can have it. But then the point about the point is it's both a positive and a negative. You're not going to be able to get a real progressive program without a strong Democratic majority and a Democrat in the White House, and money helps. But on the other hand, these industries do think they're buying something. And the question is, how much influence will they have? And there's a really disturbing thing going on right now involving hedge funds, who have an outrageous tax break through, I don't know how, no one's been able to explain quite how it happened, but somehow or other they were allowed to establish a loophole whereby hedge fund managers pay only a 15% tax rate on most of their income. And we're talking about the top 25 hedge fund managers last year earned as much as all 80,000 New York City school teachers will earn over the next 3 years. And these guys are paying mostly 15% taxes. Now, obviously, something to close. And there's quite a lot of money if you can close that loophole. You would think the Democrats would rush to do it. And in fact, they're dragging their feet. And they're dragging their feet because hedge funds give a lot of money, and as it happens, hedge funds give more money to Democrats than to Republicans. And you can see Chuck Schumer, who is personally, everyone assures me, I believe it's true, completely honest, not a hint of corruption. But he's also the head of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, and he likes in his war chest. And this is what you're worried about. I do talk in the book. I had a lot of fun in this book with history. So and there's a lot. The Gilded Age has a lot to teach us about the America we're living in now. There's a lot. Actually, there's a comparison in there which was suggested by my wife. That looking at the Gilded Age is like looking at a sepia-toned photograph of your great-grandfather and realizing that he looks a lot like you. Unfortunately, the features you seem to have inherited are the unattractive ones. And And during the Gilded Age, there were populist Democrats who always lost, buried under avalanches of money. And there were what they called Bourbon Democrats, as in French royal family, who made their peace with the robber barons and were financially competitive and occasionally won. And so during the Gilded Age proper, there was only one Democrat who made it to the White House, who was Grover Cleveland, who wasn't noticeably different from William McKinley in terms of the way he actually governed. And so I actually wrote in the Times a little while back that we hope we're about to elect FDR, but we might be about to elect Grover Cleveland. So does Hillary Clinton look like Grover Cleveland to you? I don't know. That's the big question.
Well, there is the question of money in Congress, and right now the Democratic Party, as you said, in the Senate has a one vote, depending on how Lieberman votes, kind of margin in the Senate. But it also turns out that the Democratic Party doesn't vote as a bloc. The Republican Party does, and so you often have votes where 100% of the Republican Party votes one way and 80% of the Democratic Party votes another. Now, on a party basis, that's an enormous difference. I mean, that's clearly a difference. The party is much more progressive, in fact, may in fact be progressive. But when you get into the Senate and you need 60 votes to pass anything, suddenly it turns out that if you get 80%, but not 100% of your people, then you need 75 votes in the next election in the Senate in order to get anything done, not 60 votes. And so how does one, and that's an issue of really in some ways party discipline. And so could you imagine that a Senator Reid or a Nancy Pelosi actually would crack the whip the way the Republican Party does for party discipline?
We're probably getting a little too deep into the weeds politically here, but for what it's worth, the Pelosi House is pretty disciplined. The Democrats are not. It's not Tom DeLay discipline. It's not Karl Rove screaming obscenities at people. But they've actually been quite good. There have been relatively few defections. The Senate is at this point very difficult. What has to happen is for the Republican machine to crack, which I think it will in time, as it did in the 50s, when they realized basically that being against what Americans wanted was in fact a losing political strategy, and for them to I write in the book, I'm a partisan at this point, but not out of partisanship for its own sake. I don't want to see one-party rule. I want to see us actually getting back to, in some ways, where we were in the 50s, when both parties had reasonable positions and supported the New Deal. But the way you get there by making it clear that there's a huge political price to be paid for not doing that. So if you want the relatively happy political scene of America in the post-war period came out of the 1948 election. Sorry, I love this history too much, maybe, but this, by the way, every school child was taught about Harry Truman and giving Hell Harry, and the great upset victory, and holding up the headline that says Dewey wins. But you're never told, at least I was never taught, who he was giving hell and what he was giving him hell about. And what it was Republicans who wanted to roll back the New Deal. He won that election by saying, these people want to take away Social Security and unemployment insurance and labor laws and farm programs. And after that election, the Republicans became, for about 2 decades, a party that you could, that was something you could deal with. You can see that happening. A model for what might happen eventually is Schwarzenegger in California. He tried to be a proper modern Republican for a little while, and then he had his resolutions. He had the referenda, and the great headline in the Los Angeles Times just said no, 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 the 4 propositions. And at that point, at this point, many people say he's governing as a de facto Democrat. So, in some sense, I think that Schwarzenegger is the future of the Republican Party, although he will never be president except on The Simpsons.